even mention the name of one of history's truly most iconic and greatest detectives in all of fiction, first we must have a quick recap regarding the hierarchy of the chain of command and its recent changes in leadership within Miami Metro Homicide, as it will play an important factor in exactly how this case plays out. Before Season 2 even begins and Dexter and Miami Metro are in full throttle trying to take down the ice truck killer, Lieutenant Maria LaGuerta has made a cataclysmic error in judgment and has embarrassed not only herself but the entire Miami Metro Police Department by launching a very public manhunt against the wrong man, framing a poor security guard as the ice truck killer himself, when in reality he was just another poor kidnapped victim. Matthews and the press are absolutely furious about this, and for this major misstep on Maria's part, LaGuerta has the command of Miami Metro taken away from her. And to avoid the political fallout of firing what I think is the first Cuban woman to ever lead the department, Matthew replaces her with the first Haitian woman to ever lead the department, Lieutenant Esme Pascal. This doesn't last very long, though. Sure, she wraps up the ice truck killer investigation, which was almost to its conclusion anyway, but then LaGuerta starts sleeping with Esme's fiancé, Bertrand, which gradually drives Pascal absolutely insane to a point she starts using department resources to investigate personal matters and openly has breakdowns about her deteriorating relationship in front of the entire homicide department. Damn, women do be heartless sometimes. At this point in the original story, Esme Pascal's nervous breakdown convinces Matthews to hand the reins back to Maria LaGuerta. But in this little unique scenario of ours, Matthews has a much more interesting option at his disposal. Lieutenant Frank Columbo is nothing short of a legend, not only among his peers, but nationwide as one of the best homicide investigators in history, who has been solving murders since the early 70s, probably back when Harry Morgan was still just a beat cop. On screen, Columbo has never canonically retired, but the last case he ever covered was in 2003, and he was a pretty old man by this point, and I'm sure he had a wife that was very eager for him to retire after a 35-year-long career, so assuming Columbo retires right after this case, by the time the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation is fully underway in 2007, Columbo will have been in retirement only 4 years. And considering we already know that Mrs. Columbo is a fan of the tropics and likes to go on the occasional cruise, it should be no surprise at all that Columbo and his wife wind up enjoying the company and the benefits of the already well-established and very large law enforcement retirement community that lives in Miami. Even in a community of retired hotshots from all kinds of law enforcement careers, Columbo's iconic status would immediately make him popular within those social circles, to a point that even local officials like Matthews, even if just for political reasons alone, would gladly shake his hand, play golf with him, and be his drink and cigar buddy whenever he could spare the time. Columbo himself probably isn't taking retirement very well, however, because as much as he talks about how much he loves his wife while he's on the job, it's not much of a stretch of the imagination that the vice versa could also be true. And being a homicide detective just really is a core of who Columbo really is. I'm sure when the ice truck killer investigation starts popping off on the news, Columbo is glued to the TV and the newspapers and deeply regrets his inability to involve himself in the case due to the location and his retirement status. However, with the complete dissolution of leadership in Miami Metro Homicide causing a crisis both internally and with public relations, Matthews cooks up a crazy plan to help the department save face. Even though Columbo was an LAPD officer, not a Miami officer, Columbo's legendary status as a law hero and public figure is exactly the kind of person Matthew needs to put in charge if he wants to change the narrative of incompetence the press is pushing. And the higher-ups actually agree. And so does Columbo, who, to Mrs. Columbo's disappointment, no doubt, is eager to come back out of a short-lived retirement. He takes a few exams, which Matthews arranges for him to be easily hand-waved through, and then is instantly promoted to his former rank of lieutenant for, let's be honest, purely political reasons, and then is immediately given command of the Miami Metro Homicide Department. In addition to being a genuine hero, Columbo is also of Italian descent.
Come on. facciamo cerimonia, noi italiani, come on, it's such a pleasure. Tutto con tuo paesano. Prendi, sì.
So Matthew still avoids the political flack of firing yet another woman of color and replacing her with some white guy. So to Matthews, this is absolutely the perfect fit for the job, and he couldn't be happier. Dexter, however, is living his worst nightmare. Not only is Columbo leading the investigation, but Columbo is now Dexter's direct superior. Columbo is now not just handling the Bay Harbor Butcher case, but he's handling all of Homicide's cases. He's in command. This gives Columbo an even deeper insight into the daily casework that happens in Miami Metro than someone like Lundy had. And the last thing Dexter needed was someone as keen and as perceptive as Columbo to be heading Miami Metro Homicide, because Columbo sees everything. Unfortunately for Columbo, though, he's joining the investigation late due to the shakeup in Miami Metro's leadership. So the butchered bodies have already come and gone the way of rotted sabotage. So Columbo never gets to examine the bodies himself, which honestly would probably make him too queasy to do anyway, but he still has the pictures and all the cataloged evidence on the evidence board to tell him most of what the bodies would have been able to tell him anyway. When Columbo is finally given official command late in the case and he makes his morning speech to Miami Metro, most of the department, Dexter included, don't really know what to think of him. Yes, true, they are familiar with the Columbo name and some of his achievements, most of which happened before the majority of the department were even born. But this legendary law background is not immediately apparent because Columbo does not give off that impression. In fact, in many ways, he purposely gives the opposite of that impression. He comes in early to the department, looking tired and disheveled, apologizing to the department for not having had his morning coffee yet, and joking about having not woken up this early in a few years. In his speech, he boasts about Miami Metro's recent achievements, yet downplays some of his own, and he plays up his age a bit. He purposely takes his time looking for his glasses, he misplaces some of his notes, he messes up the photo slides a few times, and he gives the overall impression to the entire department that his so-called legendary skills as a detective were maybe a little exaggerated, or at least certainly past their prime. What Miami Metro doesn't realize yet, however, is that this is an act. Columbo has powers of deduction and observation that rival that of Sherlock Holmes. The difference is, instead of flaunting his magnificent abilities and intelligence to stroke his ego, Columbo does his best to convince everyone he meets that he's actually about as sharp as Dick Gumshoe. Columbo has a reason for doing this, however, and even though Columbo is joining late into the case, he's already one step ahead. Columbo is a real common sense kind of guy. No matter what the details are, Columbo always sees the big picture. And before the first briefing has even begun, way ahead of our other detectives, Columbo already suspects someone in law enforcement is the butcher. And it's not really that hard to deduce if you think about it and have a mind like Columbo's. By the time Columbo has joined the case, the state of the Bay Harbor Butcher's vigilantism has become a media sensation. But Columbo, with a very, very long career full of police work, recognizes that all of the butcher's victims are different in almost every way, with the exception of their status as a murderer. I mean, think about it. The butcher has killed men, women, big guys, small guys, black, white, rich, poor. The butcher has taken victims from every walk of life, and their only connection is murder, which would mean the only way someone would even know these people exist is if they themselves were able to see their records. That alone narrows down the butcher's identity quite a bit. They could be a courtroom file clerk, for example, or they could work in the evidence room, or they could be a cop. It's as Columbo would probably put it, just a hunch. But it's enough of a hunch that Columbo is not immediately trusting of Miami Metro's personnel when he gets there. So he puts on his bumbling, aloof detective act to fool everyone into thinking he's more harmless than he actually is. And it works. On everyone, including Dexter. After the rocky briefing, Dexter fully buys into the clumsy persona Columbo puts out, which, as you can well imagine, is the worst thing Dexter could possibly do. Or really anyone in Miami Metro for that matter, as Masuka soon finds out when Columbo makes him cry when he asks him about just one more thing about his internet search history on the lab computer. Columbo shows up in person to as many crime scenes as he can to get a good feel of the officers under his command. So he's there at the comic book store crime scene to witness Dexter's expert handling of the blood spatter results. Columbo is genuinely impressed by this, because even in all his years as an investigator, he's never seen someone like Dexter so expertly break down the exact way a crime played out just from blood splatter alone. The problem is, Columbo is a little too impressed with this. He now thinks Dexter is some kind of super weapon, so he brings him along to literally every crime scene he can. And every time he finishes the lab work or the paperwork on one case, Columbo has got...
Oh, listen, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you about.
Oh, there's one more thing, sir.
One other thing.
One thing. One other thing.
Just one more thing. Oh, one more thing.
One more thing. One more thing, sir. I almost forgot. One more thing that I wanted to check on.
Soon the phrase "one more thing" becomes something Dexter starts hearing in his sleep. Dexter's eyes roll as he's called into the lieutenant's office for maybe the 10th or 20th time for Dexter's latest report. But this time, when Dexter tries to leave and Columbo has just one more thing to ask about, he brings up the bad blood work Lundy discusses in the original story. Dexter gives the same forensic explanation as he tries to double down on his original work before Columbo calls him out on it just like Lundy did. For the first time, Dexter feels he might have underestimated Columbo a little bit and is taken off guard by this sudden grilling. Columbo dresses him down for letting a murderer get away, no matter his excuses, and orders him out of his office and lets Dexter stew for a day. Dexter doesn't really know what to think now. He doesn't know if Columbo is just mad his new favorite lapdog is a bad blemish on an otherwise perfect record, or if Columbo is playing him. Unfortunately for Dexter, he decides one awkward boss conversation isn't enough to activate the fight or flight response, so he pushes through it and continues on with business as usual. And he doesn't see Columbo again until he gets ambushed by him at the donut shop the next morning. Columbo lays the bumbling, humble old detective act real thick here. He talks about how he's picking up some donuts for his wife, and then apologizes for getting so cross with Dexter the previous day about the blood work. Dexter just kinda nods along with whatever he says until Columbo suddenly mentions that they have a break in the Bay Harbor Butcher case. Well, this certainly gets Dexter's attention, and he quickly asks Columbo what it is. Columbo quietly tells him about the algae results on the rocks Masuka found, who was too embarrassed about the internet search history thing to tell anyone else about things that happened on his computer. And then Columbo even goes so far as to tell Dexter they've collected videotapes of boat marinas where the algae is found. Externally, Dexter seems enthusiastic about the break in the new case. Internally, Dexter is in crisis. Dexter has got to get to the station and get to that boat footage before Columbo does. And he is horrified to find when he gets there that they are already on the tape of the marina where he docked his boat. Dexter has even less time to deal with this debacle than in the original story. So Dexter waits no more than a few minutes for everyone to settle in their offices before pulling the same fire alarm trick to evacuate everyone from the department to give him enough cover to delete the footage with him on it. Dexter waits for everyone to leave, including Masuka in his silly safety vest, then finds and deletes the files he needs just like the original story. But this time, when Dexter turns around, much to his dismay, Columbo is standing right behind him. Columbo gives Dexter a smug little grin. He admits he's impressed, yet disappointed someone with so much talent turned out to be such a monster. Dexter quickly tries to defend himself with a backwards excuse, but Columbo shoots it down immediately. And when Dexter realizes there's nothing else to stand on here, he goes full mask off and just admits, fine, Columbo caught him. But he just deleted the only evidence that shows him doing anything remotely suspicious on that boat dock. Dexter is quick to point out, in the same demeanor that he threatens Dokes in the original show, that Columbo has nothing but circumstantial evidence. Columbo nods, smug smile still grinning wide. He says that's true, but it was a risk he was willing to take, because otherwise no one else would have believed him. Dexter blinks a moment, and then his heart drops as Deborah, Angel, Maria, and the rest of Miami Metro come walking back from around the corner with a mix of angered and horrified faces. Columbo admits that he had no idea if Dexter was actually on that footage or not. But he knew that if Dexter was the butcher, that when he told him about the footage at the donut shop that morning, he would have no other choice than to make a move to delete the footage. And Dexter did exactly as Columbo Columbo predicted. Truthfully, Columbo had been onto him for some time. That first day at the copycat crime scene, Columbo clocked Dexter's meticulous and peculiar crime scene behavior from the very beginning, just like Lundy did. And all that extra casework Columbo loaded Dexter up with was actually just a plot to keep Dexter busy, while Columbo did all the deep research on Dexter's personal history. Once Columbo realized Dexter might be the butcher, he knew a forensics guy as skilled as him would be too good to leave behind evidence. So Columbo's only means of capturing Dexter was to set a trap. And set a trap he did. Having been tricked into performing an act of sabotage and revealing his true nature in front of the entire homicide department, Dexter's dark journey finally comes to an end. And with a wink and a waggle of his cigar, Columbo makes sure that Dexter gets arrested. And thus, we have come to the end of the single longest Dexter vs. Detective segment I've ever produced. And the final video for not only this December, but the whole year is over. And I hope you like what I've had to offer. I had intended on uploading only one video this month instead of, well, 3, as I had originally planned to have everything you saw this month, including the Columbo video you just watched, done by December 12th, back when I originally uploaded the Benoit Blanc video. But alas, I wasn't quite able to get the Columbo segment done in time, so that prompted this possibly temporary video format change where I made 3 shorter videos instead of 1 longer one. And that's been an interesting change. I like making longer videos with lots of detectives in a single video, but a lot of you and the algorithm seems to like the change to single detective-focused videos, so let me know in the comments below which of the 2 formats you prefer, and you may see me experiment a little with both as the new year progresses. And don't think for a moment that I've forgotten about our second poll winner, Inspector Gadget, who will be coming up in the next videos to come, as well as more polls you can expect to vote on for more detectives that will give our dear dog friend Dexter a very bad day. I will, however, probably take a slight break for most of the month of January, as this is the second YouTube channel I'm managing right now, and I've been working on it pretty much non-stop since I uploaded the first Dexter video all the way back in July. But fear not, I have a clear vision for what comes next, and I'm always working behind the scenes on more and more content for this channel. So needless to say, I am very excited for this channel's potential, and I implore you, dear viewer, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and support me through my Ko-Fi or through Super Thanks if you can, because there's nothing I would like more than to work on this channel full-time, which only you can make possible. For now, though, after having been caught by 2 different world-class detectives and murdered by a legendary MI6 operative, I think Dexter has earned himself a little break. Or at least until the next video. Thank you all for watching, dear viewers. I'm Phantom Savage, and until next time, good night and Godspeed.